Hello and welcome to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In this video, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with CMCs of 4 into our Momir Vig Cube. What's going on, MTG You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment of our ongoing Momir Vig Cube Series. If you need a refresher or are unfamiliar with the goals or purpose of this series, I implore you to go fishing around in the description below. There, one of the links you will find is a link to a video that is entitled MTG Burgeoning's Introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. And while you're down fishing in the description, maybe you will also stumble upon the link to Cube Cobra, where you can click and see the entire contents of our Momir Vig Cube as it stands right now. So here we go. We've got 20 creature cards with mana values of 4 heading into our cube, and we are beginning with a Monoblack demon. It's the spawn of Mayhem. All right. We got a nice one to start things off, baby. It's a 4/4. The spectacle mechanic is completely meaningless here in Momir Vig because every creature that's summoned from the cube is done so randomly. So we have a 4/4 flying trampler, and at the beginning of our upkeep, spawn of Mayhem, it deals 1 damage to each player. Then if we have 10 or less life, we put a +1/+1 counter on spawn of Mayhem. The thinking here is, as long as this guy keeps getting bigger and bigger, we should be able to turn it sideways pretty confidently, knowing that our opponent's life totals are heading southward much more quickly than our own. Speaking of turning things sideways, this creature does not. And that is Sphinx of New Prav. It's a 4/3 with flying and vigilance. The vigilance means it does not have to tap whenever it decides to attack. And then it says spells our opponents cast, blah, 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 because there are no instants or sorceries or enchantments or artifacts. There are artifact creatures, but there are no spells that are going to be able to target Sphinx of New Prav, because any spell that does is just going to be a creature spell when it comes into play. And that's not going to be a spell that targets it. That's going to be an enter the battlefield trigger. So for the purposes of this cube, we have Sphinx of New Prav, a 4/3 with flying and vigilance. Next up, we have a mono-green creature. It is Spirit of the Aldergard. It's a 0/4 bear spirit. It is a snow creature, and that's going to be important as we get further on in its description. When Spirit of Aldergard comes into play, we search our library for a snowland card, reveal it, and put it into our hand, and then we shuffle our library. This 0/4 gets +1/+0 for each other snow permanent we control. Again, the only permanents, actually I should say the only cards in our library are basic lands. So we have 5 options when it comes to snow basics. We have, of course, island, we have mountain, we have forest, we have plains, and we have swamp. We can play non-snow basics as well, and we can also throw wastes into the basic land library as well. 11 total different options. You might want to make sure you diversify that basic land library so cards like Spirit of the Aldergard are as effective as they could possibly be. Creature number 4 is a mono-white edition. We have a 2/4 spirit, and this is Spirit of the Spires. It's a 2/4 with flying, and it gives other creatures we control with flying a modest boost to their toughness. +0, +1. That is all. It's a 2/4 flyer that gives our other flyers +0, +1. All right, reaching the quarter mark of this video is a mono green edition, and we're going back to the days of Onslaught for this card. It is Squirrel Wrangler. Here we have a 2/2 druid, and it has 2 different activated abilities for the exact same cost. We can pay 1 and a green and sacrifice a land to create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. We can pay the exact same mana and sacrifice a land, and all squirrels get +1/+1 until end of turn. In a format like Momir Vig that is all about creatures, any creatures that in any way, shape, or form can create other creatures are highly coveted, and Squirrel Wrangler is no different. Even if it costs us our own lands, there's going to be a point in the game where numbers are going to be much more important than what's actually the quality of the creatures. And with these extra lands just inundating our side of the battlefield, as long as you have forests, of course, you can activate Squirrel Wrangler's ability and create more tokens and more tokens, and, well, hopefully we can overwhelm our opponents with all of those squirrels. All right, creature number 6, Mono Red, our first one of the video. It is a 3/4 Stone Giant. All right, we can tap Stone Giant, and target creature we control with toughness less than Stone Giant's power gains flying until end of turn, and then we destroy that creature at the beginning of the end step. Now let's read this a little more carefully so we know exactly why we want this on our side of the battlefield. All right, so Stone Giant has a power of 3. We tap this and we target any one of our opponent's creatures that have a power a power less than 3. And then, of course, we don't do that during our opponent's turn because we don't want the flying creature to come our way. And then the end of the turn comes and we watch that creature helplessly get put into the graveyard, and then it ceases to exist. That's exactly how we want to play with Stone Giant. Remember, there are no instant or sorcery spells in this format. Any removal comes from the creatures themselves. So in this instance, Stone Giant is going to take care of any... I'm sorry, I said that the wrong way. It's toughness, not power. It's toughness of 4. So any creature with a toughness 3 or less, not a power of 2 or less. So Stone Giant, with its activated ability of tapping it and targeting any creature with toughness less than 4, is going to just go right into the graveyard at the beginning of the end step. So just imagine if we have any abilities on our side of the battlefield that can make that toughness even bigger. Stone Giant is a very sneaky play coming out of the 4 spot, and I do apologize. It is toughness, not power. Toughness, not power. All right, speaking of removal, we got our first mono blue edition here. Baby, it is Surge Spanner. Here we have a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard, and whenever it becomes tapped, we may pay 1 and a blue mana, and if we do, we return target permanent to its owner's hand. So there's a couple of ways we can look at this. We could bounce one of our lands back to our hand, which allows us to discard it to summon a creature from the Momir Vig Cube, or it allows us to play the land to maybe activate any, landfall abilities or anything like that. We can also target our opponent's lands as a way in which to, meddle with their tempo and throw them off a little bit. More importantly, however, we can target one of our opponent's creatures. Remember, the creatures that are summoned from the Momir Vig Cube are token copies of those creatures, and when a token leaves the battlefield, it then ceases to exist. So for the purposes of this format, we tap Surge Spinner, we pay 1 and 1 blue mana, and we're getting rid of any creature that's on the battlefield. Very, very powerful, and we got to make sure that we can keep Surge Spanner alive because it is a relatively fragile creature at 2/2 with no evasion. All right, next up we're going back to mono green, and here we have Ciroc the Huntcaller. It's a 5/4 human warrior, and it has the formidable mechanic. At the beginning of combat on our turn, if creatures we control have total power of 8 or greater, target creature we control gains haste until end of turn. So if we can muster up enough smaller creatures by the time Ciroc hits the battlefield, and we can get and activate that formidable mechanic, then that means each creature that we summon from the Momir Vig Cube thereafter will have haste and can attack the turn it comes into play. That may not seem like a big deal, but in a format like this where combat is going to win everything, getting the upper hand with one of our biggins could be the difference between winning and losing. All right, creature number 9 is our first, I'm sorry, not mono-colored, it's our first colorless edition, and that's going all the way back to the time of Tempest. That's 1997, folks, and here we have Telethopter. It's a 3/1, and we can tap a creature we control, and Telethopter gains flying until end of turn. That may not seem like it's that big of a deal, but remember, in Momir Vig, any evasion is good evasion. So if we can tap one of our 1/1s or 0/1s or walls or something to give Telethopter flying until end of turn, swing in, deal 3 points of damage. Remember, each player only begins with 24 life in Momir Vig. It won't take too many turns to see our opponents start to sweat a 3/1 Telethopter. All right, reaching the halfway point of our video, we have another mono blue edition, and it's another merfolk. Surprise, surprise. This time, it's Tempestcaller, a 2/3 merfolk wizard. When it comes into play, we tap all creatures target opponent controls. Notice it says target opponent, so if those creatures have protection or shroud, they're still getting tapped. And to play this as strategically as possible, we might want to target the opponent whose turn is last in the turn order after ours. Then that way, their battlefield is completely Their battlefield is completely open for attacking by us and our following opponents, and hopefully that will be enough to knock that opponent right out of the game. All right, we're moving forward with creature number 11, and it's our second multicolored creature of this video. It is Thunderous Snapper. You can leave your jokes in the comment section below. We have a 4/4 Turtle Hydra, and whenever we cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, we draw a card. That's it, folks. We're summoning those creatures from the cube. Every time they're 5 or more at a clip, we're putting another card in our hand. All right, we're going to mono red here. It's a wizard, and we have Thunderscape Master. We're going back in time here, folks. This is back to the time of 2000. Wow, baby. All right, Thunderscape Master, 2/2 wizard. We can pay 2 black mana and tap this wizard and have target player lose 2 life, and we gain 2 life. That 4-point life swing is very, very important. Remember, we begin the game with 24 life. There's very few ways to gain additional life outside of any abilities that our creatures might have. So an ability like this could be huge. But it's only huge if you have the mana to do it, so make sure you have those swamps in your basic land library. As an additional ability, we can pay 2 green mana and tap the Thunderscape Master, and creatures we control get +2/+2 until end of turn. That buffering could be a big deal, but again, it's only as big as your diverse basic land library can be. All right, back-to-back mono red creatures, and this one, this creature could be a hazard or it could be a complete whiff. From Throne of Eldraine, we have Torbrand, Thane of Redfell. It's a 2/4 dwarf noble. If a red source we control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. The fact that each creature that's summoned from the Momir Vig Cube is done so randomly, this really takes the ability to build around Torbrand's presence on the battlefield and turns it on its head. Are we lucky enough to have more red creatures on our side of the battlefield? We better hope so if we end up investing 4 mana and summoning a copy of Torbrand to our side of the battlefield. All right, another mono green creature here. We have Toski, Bearer of Secrets. We got a 1/1 squirrel. It can't be countered. It's indestructible. It attacks each turn if able, and whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. Card draw, of course, is important in all formats. In Momir Vig, it may be the most vital, because the cards that are in our hand are the cards we draw from our library, of course, and they're all basic lands. We need to play a land each turn in order to generate the mana to summon our creatures, but we can't do so without discarding a card from our hand, which is also a land. So if we have any card draw abilities, similar to what Toski presents here, that's going to help us out-tempo our opponents, and we should have no problem claiming victory in that game. All right, we reached the 3/4 mark of this video with another colorless edition, and this time it's Traxos, Scourge of Krug. Here we have a 7/7 Trampler, it's a construct, and Traxos enters the battlefield tapped and does not untap during your untap step. This is a point that we prove pretty much in every single video that we've done here during our Momir Vig Cube series. Not every creature in the cube is uber helpful or uber powerful. However, if we cast a historic spell, we get to untap Traxos. So, historic spells are artifacts, which there are a lot of artifact creatures in this Momir Vig Cube, and legendaries. There are more legendary creatures in this Momir Vig Cube than there are artifact creatures. Sagas are also historic, but again, there are no enchantments in this cube. It's all creatures all the time. So hopefully with some luck and the stars align in our favor, we may be able to untap Traxos more than once and send this 7/7 Trampler that we only invested 4 mana into right into combat. All right, creature number 16, we gotta go back to mono red, and here we have a Treasonous Ogre. It's a 2/3 Ogre Shaman with the Dethrone mechanic. So we're going back to the time of Conspiracy for Dethrone, and that means that whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. Pretty decent. I mean, it is a 2/3 with no evasion. More importantly, and perhaps potentially game-winning, is its bottom ability. We can pay 3 life and add 1 red mana to our mana pool. So let's roll out this scenario here. We add 4 mana into our Momir Vig Simic Visionary Avatar. We get a token copy of Treasonous Ogre. It's on our side of the battlefield. We move to turn 5. We play our land on turn 5. We have 5 available mana. Then we can pay up to 9 life for 3 more mana and get a creature with a converted mana cost of 8 or more on turn 5. Now, 9 mana when we're starting with 24 may seem like a massive investment, but you know some of the creatures that are lurking in that 8+ tier. There's only 100 of them, and you have a 1 in 3 shot of summoning a creature with a CMC greater than 8. Treasonous Ogre could be a huge hit from the 4 spot if everything else works out as best as it can. All right, next up, we're back to mono blue. We're going back to the time of Odyssey here. It's the Treetop Sentinel, a 2/3 bird soldier. It has the evasion and flying. It has more evasion and protection from green. Now, there aren't a really high number of flying green creatures. There's a lot of green creatures with reach, however. And again, this can just sit back and protect our life total by blocking all creatures with green, and it's not going to take any damage. So Treetop Sentinel is great on offense and great on defense. All right, 3 creatures left. This is creature number 18. It's another multicolored edition. And here we have True Fire Captain, a 4/3 human knight with the Mentor mechanic. So for the Mentor mechanic, whenever True Fire Captain attacks, we put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. Note, we cannot put the +1/+1 counter on True Fire Captain itself. It has to go on another attacking creature. Okay, now with that being said, whenever True Fire Captain is dealt damage, it doesn't have to just be combat damage, it could also be direct damage. It deals that much damage to target player. So if we can get this creature's power and toughness boosted through other peripheral abilities or effects from creatures on our side of the battlefield and send it into combat, our opponents really are going to have to start thinking about how they're going to block that, because each time, even if they choose to chump block it, which they most likely will, they're still going to take direct damage from True Fire Captain's second ability. And in that war of attrition, we end up in front because we keep sending that creature into combat. They keep chump blocking it, but they still keep taking damage. All right, from the 4 spot, this creature could be a boon or it could be a bust. We have Ulasht, the Hate Seed. This Hydra is a 0/0, but it comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other red creature we control, and a +1/+1 counter on it for each other green creature we control. Note that these +1/+1 counters do not go on Ulasht for Ulasht being red or for Ulasht being green. We need the support of our other creatures. And again, with each creature being summoned from the Momir Vig Cube randomly, we don't know if we're going to have any red or green creatures on our side of the battlefield when Ulasht hits the field. So we could invest 4 mana into a creature that dies immediately. Like I said earlier in the video, folks, not every creature in the Momir Vig Cube is uber powerful or uber useful. If we do happen to get some +1/+1 counters onto Ulasht, we can pay 1 generic mana to remove one of them, and then we can have it deal 1 damage to target creature, or we can create a 1/1 green Sapperling creature token. So if we're fortunate enough to get those +1/+1 counters on it, Ulasht becomes a little more versatile through direct damage and other creature creation. Yeah, I think that'll work. Creature creation, sure. All right, MTG BC. We're down to creature number 20. We began with Monoblack. We're going to end with Monoblack here. We have the Undercity Necrolisk. A 3/3 zombie wizard. We can pay 1 mana and sacrifice another creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Undercity Necrolisk. It then gains menace until end of turn. We can only activate this ability anytime we could cast a sorcery. So that's going to mean during our main phase. You know how that works. All right, so with enough sacrificial fodder on our side of the battlefield, we're looking at you, Ulasht the Hate Seed, and your potential Sapperling tokens. We may have enough to get this guy big enough and give him the appropriate evasion and menace to swing it at an opponent and make that opponent make some tough choices. Maybe we 2 for 1, or maybe the opponent just decides to take a bevy of combat damage. All right, there we go, MTG BC. We are 20 cards closer to the completion of our Momir Vig Cube. This time, it was CMC of 4. Let me know in the comments section below, which are your favorites? This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.